We have some updates to the Reedy Creek situation with the Walt Disney Company in the state of Florida, and I've brought in two friends to discuss it, WDW Pro from thatparkplace.com and Andrew Esquire of Legal Mindset. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valliant Renegade. It's great to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video that may not yet be subscribed, please take a moment, hit that little red subscribe button and turn it gray. Hit the like button on this video. Share this sucker out on the social medias. And, of course, do leave a comment before you head out the door today. The comments are so important to these kind of videos. YouTube loves those things. And I've got two great guests with me today for this video, both of which who have been frequent guests here on Valliant Renegade, but never together. So for the first time, we have got WDW Pro from thatparkplace.com and Andrew from Legal Mindset. Welcome aboard, gentlemen.
My pleasure.
Hello.
Glad to be here with you, gentlemen. Glad to be here and happy to be dealing with, two professionals. And we're going to talk about this topic in a way that nobody else is talking about it, because this has always been a very emotional topic and not a very factual topic.
Yes. Yeah. And especially as it got going. And for those of you out there that are new to the channel, and I know there's a lot of you new to this channel since the last time that we discussed this, when it all started, maybe 6 months ago or so, 7 months ago now at this point. What is Reedy Creek and how does it relate to the Walt Disney Company? Just as a very 30,000-foot overview, Reedy Creek is a special taxing district in the state of Florida that was created 60 some odd years ago, specifically for the Walt Disney Company to generate what later became its theme park system, which we now know as Walt Disney World, all the different resorts, Epcot, all those places, private Disney property with a special government tax district wrapper around it. Now, originally, the goal of Reedy Creek was to create an actual community. But of course, that never really happened. They went strictly into the theme park side. So over the course of time, especially in the last 20 to 30 years, there has been a lot of discussion in the Florida State Legislature about whether or not that district needed to be revisited from a standpoint of law, because while there are a lot of special taxing districts all over Florida, Reedy Creek is very unique. It has its own set of rules. They basically get to do things that nobody else in Florida that has their special districts get to do. And the reason that we have Andrew from Legal Mindset here is because Andrew is one of the few attorneys from Florida that actually understands this very specific area of law. Legal Mindset has helped in the formation of quite a number of special taxing districts in the state of Florida and is intimately familiar with the legal workings of those districts, and as well as Reedy Creek and everything that's been going on. And Pro, of course, from thatparkplace.com, who does the Disney Park blog and news, has also been following it. So this is going to be a great discussion, I think, for this, because I don't think you're going to hear this information anywhere else. And we're also going to give Andrew a little time to put on his bragging hat on this one, because 6 or 7 months ago on this channel, he told us exactly how this scenario was going to play out once this started, back when Disney stepped in it, getting involved in the political sphere, chastising the state of Florida, the governor, Ron DeSantis, for the passage of House Bill 1557, the Parental Rights and Education Bill, which many have erroneously referred to as the Don't Say Gay Bill. So, Andrew, why don't you kind of walk us back through a little bit on that and maybe talk about, some of that stuff again, kind of how we got to where we're at now.
Sure. And I love the name that we're not allowed to call it, which is the it rhymes with rooming bill, right? That's the counter name that we can't say on social media anymore. But I think that's just as valid as the Don't Say G bill. But anyways, that being neither here nor there, let me point one thing out, kind of a refresher on Reedy Creek. Reedy Creek is not just a special taxing district. It is not just a simple area where a private business is assessed for, something that is public that goes through its community. For example, there's many communities in Florida that have public facilities, public amenities like roads or parks. And those are considered public, and those can be funded even if the only people assessed in there are private, right? The Villages is one of such areas, so long as they maintain it in a public way and for the use and enjoyment of the general public, that's totally fine. So in general, there wasn't a problem with the public infrastructure, the roads and such that are passing through Disney being funded by a special taxing district. The problem is, and the real issue is that Disney did not just have a special taxing district, they had essentially their own county. And not just their own county, but their own county with superpowers. This is an absolute from Krypton entity, something I haven't seen in my entire legal career anywhere else in the United States. And I have specifically studied this area of law. Of all the areas of law, this is my special practice area. And I can say there's nothing in the United States like the Reedy Creek Improvement District. No other place has exemption from all state and local regulation. Orange County, the state of Florida, they can't say shit to the Reedy Creek Improvement District. They can do whatever they want. And one thing which many people don't know, I said it before, I'll say it again, they can build a nuclear power plant if they want, and nobody can come down at the state or local level to regulate them. Of course, the NRC at the federal level could. The state can't exempt them from that. But other than that, there's no state or local regulation. They can do whatever they want. They're essentially running their own government. This is not something that is your garden variety district. And frankly, as a person who practices this area of law, this never should have happened. But for politicians being bought and paid for in Florida back in the day, regardless of deer or R, whatever box they were punching, people were bought and paid for by Disney back in the day. They greased the wheel, they paid the hog, and they got this through the legislature with all these special benefits. And as we roll forward into 2022, people are asking, why do they have this special privilege that no one has in Florida? In fact, no one has in the entire United States. There is no other entity in the world other than actual governments, right? Unless you're looking at the federal government or an actual county that has the power that they have. A private company does not control an entity like this in the United States. It just does not simply exist. And because of this, we're asking in 2022, 2023, as we move to 2023, why do they have these powers? In fact, many other entities have tried to get these powers. Universal Studios, a large contributor to the economy of Central Florida, even pushed that at one point, kind of probed, hey, can we go there? Can we have that? They said, no way. We're not going down that road. We're not doing it again. We think it was a mistake. So finally, when Disney decided to go woke, when they decided to say on this specific bill, the Parental Rights and Education Bill, its actual name, when they decided to say, we stand against this, a bill which simply said that they don't want very young children in third grade and under, being propagandized with CRT about anything really about gender and sexuality at that young age. When they tried to prohibit that, there was an absolute meltdown, as if people of the LGBTQA++ community were being rounded up and herded off. That was absolutely not something that happened. It absolutely did not prohibit teachers from expressing their sexuality or their sexual preference. It absolutely did not prohibit people from mentioning it on social media or anywhere else. All it did was say, hey, the curriculum, the books, the lessons cannot tell kids who are very, very young, hey, have you thought about transitioning? Hey, I see you've got a Barbie and a G.I. Joe. Have you thought about HRT? Have you talked to Keffels? I mean, these are things that they're once again, you shouldn't be allowed to do this with young children. If you're an adult, do whatever you want. I'm of the belief that adults can do whatever they want. And many Floridians are of that belief. So Ron DeSantis said, in line with my mandate, in line with what Floridians sent me to the governor's house to do, we're going to repeal this. We're going to repeal this entity, which should never have been there in the first place, should never have had these privileges. And if you're going to politicize it and profit off of it, because their status as a public entity that's exempt from all these taxes, impact fees, lets them save millions of dollars. At this point, probably billions, trillions of dollars. No one's really done the math on how much they've made over the decades on this. I would bet trillion would not be an exaggeration, but That being said, don't have the numbers, but they have profited off this immensely. And the Florida legislature said, no, we're taking it away. And immediately, what did they say? Oh, this is going to go crazy. This is going to fail. There's public bonds that are going to be liable to the general public in Orange County. And I said on that stream, I said, there's no way that's happening. That's not how Florida law works. That's not how special district law works. It happened in the villages, right, where they revoked their entity status. Only that area will be liable. It is not possible to convert those bonds into a general obligation of of Orange County or any other county or entity. It is not a thing. It is not possible. And I said, what will happen is they will convert the district, as is completely permissible under law, into a different type of special district under 189 or 190. Either a community development district or a general purpose special district. They'll have powers. They'll be able to do a lot of what they've done, including finance those bonds, but they won't have superpowers. They won't be exempt from everything else. They'll be treated like every other community, every other special taxing district in Florida and in the United States.
And what I thought was,
I told you so.
Yeah, no, you absolutely did. And to that end, I found it funny. Pro and I were having the discussions around that time, and people were in news articles. They were citing, well, here's all of the reasons why this little political stunt, as they would refer to it, by Ron DeSantis was going to fail. And they would cite, well, here's the Florida state law that says they can't do this, or the bonds are going to go here. But they were citing 189 and 190. But Reedy Creek was not formed under 189 and 190. So not only did they not understand the law that they were dealing with, they were misrepresenting the law that Disney should have been playing under, like everybody else was, and applying it to a situation that it could not apply to. But Pro, I remember in our video, and I want you to talk about this because you're a lot more familiar with this and how this worked with Reedy Creek, because it's funny now to see how the headlines are starting to change and starting to reflect exactly what Andrew just said 6-7 months ago. We did a flyover on Google Maps. Tell everybody out there, remind everybody out there what makes up Reedy Creek. How many people live in this town?
So as a primer, just know that when they set up Reedy Creek and they set up the two cities that exist within that district, that was occurring during the time when Walt Disney was actually alive, and he was proposing to the state of Florida that they were going to put in an actual city, right? So that's the whole idea behind Epcot, the experimental prototype city of tomorrow. They had all the diagrams, they had all the mapping out. And so that was the idea. After his passing, the company, well, they got cold feet on this, and they realized that that was a very expensive endeavor. It could take the entire company down. They didn't know how to do it. It was very nebulous from the get-go. And they really knew how to make movies, and they knew how to make theme parks. And that's what they wanted to continue doing. The problem is they had these two cities. So they had the city of Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista. Now, what do you do when your special district is controlled essentially by these two cities, which are not actually cities, and you don't intend to have them ever become cities? Well, one thing that you could do, which would be scrupulous to say the least, is you could set up a cul-de-sac with mobile homes on it. Now, that's some chutzpah, but that's what they did. Yes. And they made sure that the denizens of the mobile home parks were individuals that only Disney selected, and you're likely to never hear of them unless you come into a video like this. If you're reading about the situation from the trades, they're not going to tell you that there's about 8 double wides sitting on Walt Disney World in hidden locations that allow them to run a pseudo city government. Well, 2 of them, although they both meet in the same location in Disney Springs, they both have their meetings there, just 1 hour for one, and then the next hour they bring in the other. And it's all a formality because they're all pre-selected by Disney. So their mayors, their city council, et cetera. And it's really hard to imagine that it is a city because you're talking about maybe a dozen people who live in each city. And so that's the other problem that Disney has, is that they have this special district that's supposed to be controlled by these 2 cities. The problem is that the cities are pseudo-cities that don't actually exist. And once you start to peel back the layers in this onion, you realize that it's all smoke and mirrors. All of this is just existent in order to give Disney the powers of a small country existing in Central Florida. And it also gives them that competitive advantage. I mean, truly, what are we talking about? We're talking about an area the size of Manhattan that has governmental powers. Like Andrew said, it can do a nuclear power plant if it wants to. And you'll see people in the news poo-poo that, right? And they're like, oh, they would never do such a thing. Well, they had an airfield, okay? They got an airstrip. They chose not to use it. Yep. So let's not put it past them. They get to use experimental technology when they're building their structures that other places don't get to do. They can reroute their waterways in ways that the other areas, the other theme parks can't do. So they have tremendous market advantage over the other theme parks and entertainment areas. The key was here that Florida was so desperate to get Disney that they were willing to look the other way for decades. And then Disney, and here's the thing that I'd like to hear from Andrew and for you, VR, as well. Mm-hmm. Here's what I think on all this. I think that when the legislation came through from DeSantis and the legislature in Florida talking about parental rights, I think that within the mainstream, if that is articulated accurately to people, almost nobody has a problem with it. Now, we know that on the fringes, you're going to get some people who are hostile to the idea that we can't talk to small children about orientation and preferences and explicit acts. Okay? On the fringes, maybe there are people out there, and surely there are, who have a problem. They want to be able to talk to small children through the state. And that's what we're discussing, through the state on that. But here's what I think. I think that that the people inside the company, inside Disney, who wanted to get rid of Chapek, they needed an opportunity to go after him. And this was the opportunity to do so because he was being silent on it. And so they saw this as a vulnerability. And because they went after him on this legislation, it forced his hand and it forced the board's hand in a way that they didn't want to go with, which then put them in odds or at odds with the state of Florida. And that's how all of this got so messy. And then the cleanup crew came in afterwards through the media, through the access media, through the trades and the publications, right? So they come in and they spin it. Now, none of the things they said came true. Everything that Andrew said would happen did happen because guess what? He's actually an attorney who understands the law in that area. And I think that it was all intentional, of course, to come clean this up and say, oh no, the people in these counties, their taxes are going to go up. Please ignore for a moment that there's state law that requires taxes not go up past a certain percentage year to year. Okay, so that's what I think. That's how this entire mess happened. Is the people who were opposed to Chapek threw them into an untenable situation. Mm-hmm. Disney handled it poorly. The cleanup crew came in with the propaganda later, and here we are a year later. And guess what? Two things are going to happen. Thing number one is Disney going to lose a lot of their self-governing powers. Thing number two, the state of Florida is going to sit on those boards, and they're going to get a say in this.
Yeah. That's where they're at right now, according to, and I'll pull the article up here. And I know, Andrew, I do want you to jump in on this, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been the biggest issue is that, and Andrew, you can speak more to this because it wasn't just a matter of the taxes can't go up, X amount more, more than X amount per year. It's also an issue of, if I recall from you saying before, Andrew, that it's also the matter of nobody else outside of the properties that were paying the bills can then be you can't spread the tax out to other areas that were not previously financially liable for it. So that means that the two cities, Bay Lake and Buena Vista, would then the bond debt would default back upon them. Mm-hmm. Every piece of property within those cities is owned by Disney. So at the end of the day, Disney still has to pay the tax bill. They can't spread it out to other homeowners that were not part of that district. So
Andrew, one of the funnest things we did, one of the funnest things VNR ever did, honestly, in all the videos we've done, is we determined, based on the taxes and based on the liabilities, how much each one of those mobile homes was suddenly taking on. Yeah. It was awesome.
The debt load on each trailer.
Each mobile home was like, $150 million or something like that. It was
double
great.
wide. Yeah. Oh, that's great. The most expensive mobile park on earth. That's a clickbait thumbnail. The most expensive mobile homes on earth.
That's not bad.
But let me say one thing. I mean, first of all, I've been to that Reedy Creek office. I've been to those sham meetings. It is absolutely hilarious, and it absolutely is a rubber stamp. And by the way, if you want the closest thing to Epcot you're ever going to see, and I think we'll ever see in our lifetime, it may be sad, it may be not what Walt wanted, right? The closest thing we'll ever get to Epcot in our lifetime is Celebration, a community that they built and then turned over to the citizens, many of which are employees or love Disney, right? I mean, that's a community for people generally who love Disney or are very affluent. So I think that's the closest we'll ever see to Epcot in our lifetime. And they have their own governance board. They have their own way of running things. They have their own special district. And they should, and I think Disney, Reedy Creek, can play by the same rules as Celebration, play by the same rules as all the other entities that are surrounding them, because they are indeed surrounded by special districts. In fact, they're completely ringed by special districts. That particular area is ringed by special districts. So the fact that you can literally throw a stone and hit a special district that's playing by different rules is patently not fair. But let me speak to that. I love that WDW Pro brought up the issue of the tax rate increase. That's something that applies to everybody, whether you're a business or a residential. There's a lock in Florida on the amount that your taxes can go up every year. That's just a fact. And homeowners in Florida know this, by the way, because there's many different entities, local governments in Florida that go to the max every single year, that literally do that. I was just speaking on my channel about Coral Gables, an area of Miami. They often do that, right? Go to the maximum amount they can, and the justification is they're providing a lot of services and other things like that. So that's something they'll do. But on top of that, there's two types of bonds. There's general obligation bonds and revenue bonds, right? Revenue bonds, specific money is allocated toward those for a specific purpose. General obligation, that is essentially, it becomes a general obligation of that entity. And therefore you can increase the ad valorem tax in order to pay for those general obligation bonds. Now the bonds on Reedy Creek are a mix. Some of them are revenue, and I believe some of them are more structured like general obligation. But regardless, whether it's one or the other, it doesn't matter. The only property that Florida law allows it to be assessed on is the property within Reedy Creek. And all of that property is owned by one of Disney's entities. And don't let the property appraiser's map fool you, because you may go there and click on it and see different names or holding companies. Disney owns all of that.
It's all Disney, yeah. There
may be 20 different names. It's all owned by Disney. Do not worry. It is not a private developer. It's not a private community. If it's within Reedy Creek, it is 100% owned by a branch or subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company. 100%.
Yeah. And that's the big thing that, again, people, I think, upfront fail to realize. And let me pull this article up, because this is what I kind of really wanted to get to now that we've kind of reminded folks what we talked about months ago here in the first video that we did on Reedy Creek. And this is from Variety. This is from last week. And
I can tell.
Yeah. Well, the one from the Los Angeles Magazine had some fun language. We read through some of that on the Sunday live stream. That it was even like, how many things can you get wrong, or how much bias can you have in one article? That one article was trying to break the bank on it. But this is the article after Don't Say Gay, a weekend Disney hopes to limit the damage. May 5th, two Florida state officials traveled to Orlando to meet with the leadership of Disney's self-governing district. And 2 weeks earlier, Ron DeSantis had abolished the district in a retaliation for Disney's opposition to a law that restricts classroom instruction on LGBTQ identity. Now, again, to say that he struck it down in retaliation to that, I could see how some people could make that argument. But again, at the same time, as we've discussed previously, there has been quite a bit of conversation over the last several decades that, as to why Disney still had this very special taxing district. This was something that had been, frankly, they've been wanting to do it, or a lot of people in the legislature have been wanting to do it for a good long time. The problem was the political will to that point had not been there to actually accomplish it. After Disney stuck its foot in its mouth, then it was. And Ron DeSantis pushed forward, and the legislature was more than happy to say, you know what, it's way overdue. This is finally going to happen. Let's get it done. But
let's take a pause for a minute, and let's let Andrew explain something real quick, because there may be some people out there who are remembering that at the beginning of this, there were many publications who were saying that the state of Florida could not do this because it was infringing on Disney. And that goes back to this retaliatory thing. So let's let Andrew explain real quick the Article 3 issue and why Disney did not have the ability to even have standing to claim that they were being retaliated against in this situation.
So here's the thing. This was a special act of legislature that created Reedy Creek. This was not the will of the people. This was not a referendum. This was a special act by politicians where they greased the wheel and they passed this. This is totally different than other processes by which special districts are set up. Usually at the local level, there's lots of meetings and notice and all other requirements. They followed none of those. Those rules that apply to you, they don't apply to Disney. Rules for thee, not for me, right? So let's just clear that up, that they were given a special pass on this. And because the legislature brought them into this world, they can take them away. But to standing, in WDW Pro's point, Disney is not the entity at all with standing. In fact, by Disney claiming it has standing, it shows that these are mere shadow entities. The Reedy Creek Improvement District, the cities, the city of Buena Vista, those are mere puppets for Disney, an alter ego of Disney. They're revealing that, right? They're showing their cards. They have no standing. The only entity with standing is really Reedy Creek. Reedy Creek is the one being challenged. Reedy Creek is the one that gets to appeal, because that's supposed to be a place where there's people living there. Now, we've talked about those people are people in double wides. And by the way, they're all Disney employees or people that are strongly connected to Disney, extremely loyal to Disney. It's supposed to be a public entity. Those people could bring a claim. They won't, because the second they do that, once again, the house of cards drops. And Disney, in its rush to virtue signal, it really screwed the pooch there. It really messed up, because they literally have absolutely no standing on this. They'd be dismissed out of pocket if they actually tried to bring this to the Florida Supreme Court.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because no, you're right. I mean, what would the 12 people and the 12 people in Reedy Creek, really have no standing either, if you think about it, because Reedy Creek didn't jump up and say anything about Florida House Bill 1557, right? That was Disney. So what would we sue is, we had people in chat, people commenting on videos, people in some of these articles that have been written over the last several months screaming that, well, it's a violation of First Amendment rights, Disney's political free speech. I'm like, they didn't go after Disney. They went after what is supposed to be a separate, autonomous, and properly operating special taxing district, a government entity that Disney is not supposed to have puppet control over. So, right. Which is it? So again, it's, all these arguments that they've been basically making, and you'll find some of them here repeated in this variety piece is as being exactly all for naught.
Right.
So, right.
And once again, it just is revealing that really this is something that is that alter ego that should have never been there in the first place. It shouldn't have existed in the first place. It's just revealing, honestly, the validity of this. The fact that it didn't happen earlier is exactly what WDW Pro said. It's because they needed to find the right moment for this. People have been thinking it, but you don't come at Disney. It's like you don't take the punch unless you're going to have the knockout. And this was the opportunity, and they just swung away and hit it out of the park.
You've also got to note that Disney had tremendous naivete. The leadership had real naivete when it comes to the idea that they could push the state of Florida, and they could push people of a particular political side that's dominant in Florida right now without any blowback to them. And you could sort of tell when this all happened that Disney didn't have a good answer to any of this. They were not prepared for it. I think they had always been under the belief system that they were just too big and too important in Florida for this ever to be challenged. So they were just going to skate through forever. And I don't know, this may go back to even the situation in North Carolina when corporations were really able to bully that state in regards to bathroom policies of all things. But there may have been sort of a standard set with some of these corporations where they just had this belief system they could really push around these states. Now, Florida's much bigger than North Carolina, but they seem to be going with that same precedent. Didn't work here.
Let me put something, WW Pro. This might actually be something that I can think affected their mentality. Even though Orange County and to extent Osceola have absolutely no authority over them, they bend the knee backwards to a ridiculous extent. I mean, within their, even the city of Orlando, all of them, right? They bend the knee backwards. And granted, Disney donates a lot of money to these local governments. For example, if you go to the Dr. Phillips Center in Orlando, there's a ton of money that Disney pours into that to keep them paid, to keep them on the payroll, to keep them happy. And I can tell you from working with law firms, they bend over backwards for those Disney bucks, even though Disney underbids constantly because they know that people will underbid in order just to capture Disney and get their name as a client on their marquee. But Disney keeps all of them bought and paid for, keeps all the local politicians. And I think because they have so captured the local politicians, because they've so captured the local market, they felt cocky. They really started to feel themselves on a state level. And I think that's where they fucked up.
And isn't that funny? Isn't that funny, VR, that we have, from a completely different side of Disney, we've been talking about the exact same thing in merchandising, where we've had insiders come to us talking about on the merchandise side. It's the exact same thing where you take less from Disney, you put yourself in a precarious situation because it's Disney. Disney's big. You want to have Disney on your side, and then Disney has been hosing these merchandising partners. Looks like it's the same thing over in the state of Florida.
It is. And, something else, Andrew, when you brought that up, I thought where you were going was the fact that I think where Disney really had an issue with this, where the wheels really came off. I think if they had left it at, Chapek's statement to say, okay, well, we're going to come out and we're now going to work to repeal this, right? That was like, well, wait, this is already passed. This is done. Now you're going to actually come out to work to repeal. But it's when they announced that they were going to suspend all political contributions in the state of Florida. Well, you just cut off the money train that was buying you the good graces all those years. And it's like, when you announced that, there was nothing holding any of these politicians back that had probably otherwise recognized the fact that Disney really should not still have something like this.
They threw away the leverage.
And here's the thing. For years, they didn't care if it was Democrat or Republican. They paid them both off. Because, by the way, there are plenty of Republicans that have a say. But saying, hey, we're not funding one team. We're only funding people if you get behind our super woke agenda. That immediately lost them there. Because I'm going to be real with you. There's lots of Republicans that are easy to buy off. They're not immune from being bought off either. Elephant or donkey, you can pay them off. If you want to pay them off, you can buy them off if you want to buy them off. But when you say, okay, we're pulling the money from one team, like you said, they've got no reason. They've got zero reason to be in your camp. In fact, you've now called them out. So they now feel a reason to respond to you.
Right. All right. So let me make an important point there. So Disney said they were going to cut off all the money, period, to all the politicians, right?
Yes.
But you're right in that they cut it off from one team still, because Disney was going to continue donating to the organizations and the charities which fund one particular party and not the other. Right. So de facto, despite the fact they said they're going to cut it off from both, de facto, by their methodology, one side was going to continue to receive big bucks.
Right. Yeah, just not directly to the politicians or maybe necessarily to a PAC, a political action committee of a particular party or group or something. But yes, you're right. To certain organizations, they were still going to get the Disney bucks. So again, leaving the politicians, with no handcuffs at that point. They were free to go back and use their better judgment and say, well, we should have gotten rid of this long ago. Now we have no reason not to. So, boop, here we go. But if you look at this article, one of the things that I liked when I saw this, that immediately, again, thinking back to the conversations you and I first had months ago, Andrew, the plan as it has since come into focus. So now the first part of the article kind of talked about what happened 6 months ago. Now we're talking about today, involves adding state appointees to sit alongside Disney's representatives on the district's governing board. Like how they said Disney's representatives. It's like, we're not even going to try to hide it. It's Reedy Creek. It's Disney people. It might as well be.
Mask off.
That's a heck of a catch. That's a slip up. You're exactly right. They slipped up at that moment.
Yeah, Disney's representatives on Reedy Creek's governing board. The district will be recreated with a few cosmetic changes, allowing it to function essentially unchanged, which is exactly what Andrew predicted, that it would be reformed under sections 189 or section 190 of Florida state law, which is where every other special taxing district has been having to play since their inceptions. So people think that, and this is what I was saying Sunday on the live stream, I said, months ago when you and I talked, I said, people are going to misinterpret when this does happen. And they're going to jump up and down and say, Ron DeSantis caved. Disney got their special tax
Nope.
district back. And it's like, no, they did not. They are not. Reedy Creek, as we knew it for 60 years, is gone. Okay, they are now going to have to play under the same rules as all these other places. So they're not going to get to just, as I've mentioned before as an example, if Universal Studios wants to build a new attraction in Harry Potter World, or if they want to set up a new roller coaster or something.
An entirely new theme park, perhaps.
Or or if they want to build an ice cream stand.
WW gets it. WW gets it.
But or an ice cream stand, they had to go seek approval. They had to get planning and zoning involved. They had to file for permits. They had to pay impact fees. They had to do all these things. They had to pay the counties, which I believe they're in Orange County as well, or Osceola. They're
Orange County. Fully in Orange County.
Yeah, so Orange County, every time Universal did something in a park, were getting paid fees. They were receiving tax revenue just as any other place. They had regulatory authority over, a lot of the aspects of that park. There is no regulatory authority or anybody else to pay when it comes to Reedy Creek. That's it.
And they're beholden to real citizens, the actual voters of the counties in which the business entities operate. That's the thing. They're beholden to real people, not corporate shills. And look, there are districts in Florida that are completely owned by corporations. That's fine. However, those entities have very limited powers. We're talking pipes and pavement people. We're really talking water, stormwater. They're allowed to do firefighting, but really it's the roads, right? You want to keep the roads running, you want to keep the transit going. And there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that Disney in Reedy Creek is currently doing that they cannot transfer to another special entity. They may have to ask the county government for special permission on certain things. There's certain things you have to ask for permission for, but there's no reason the county government wouldn't grant it. And in fact, I think they absolutely would, because they're already doing it and doing it in a competent way. Stuff like mosquito control. In case you guys haven't heard, mosquitoes kind of suck in Florida. So they're doing that, but
that's something here in Louisiana we will pay any amount of tax money to have. They could triple my mosquito abatement, millage on my property tax, and I will happily write that check.
Yeah, they're not gonna take that away from them. They're not gonna lose any of that. There's nothing. They're not gonna shut down the monorail. They're not gonna have the train at Magic Kingdom stopping. Closed by DeSantis. Any sort of propaganda that anything they're doing would be stopped is absolute BS. It's absolute hyperbole. And I do think Valliant, it will be interesting if they try to spin this. And the other thing I'm interested in is, depending on which way the election goes. Yes. If the election goes a certain way in the next couple months, and I'm not going to go there too much because I want to keep this channel nice and clear, but if it goes a certain way, right? If it goes a certain way in DeSantis's favor, I think you may see Disney do even more backing down.
I think you could be right. I think, look, as Pro and I have noticed since all of this went down in April with House Bill 1557 and Disney's response, the Disney walkout people and all this, the one person that showed up to protest in front of the Orlando theme parks, and maybe 150, 200 of them that walked around on their lunch break in Burbank, or whatever it was. They have been dead quiet since right after that. Like when all that Christopher Rufo leak happened with the Reimagine Tomorrow. Yeah, all of the videos and all that kind of stuff. You have not heard a mouse fart out of these folks. They've got
their DEI person, Tawn Newton, has went into a bunker somewhere in Burbank. She's not coming out.
Yeah, they wouldn't. She wasn't even allowed. Wasn't Pro like 3 months ago when
there was a trade angry because she was refused to be allowed to give a statement, and you could tell by reading the article it was meant to celebrate her and what she had done with all of this, and Disney. And you got to think she's directly under Bob Chapek. I mean, she is up there in the top echelon of the leaders in Disney. Somebody told her she couldn't talk to the publication.
I believe it was Variety.
I believe it was.
Yeah.
Hey, let me point out one thing on this that I think is important in the highlighted parts you got. Because I think there's an important undersell here that they do, and I think it's on purpose. But if you look at the end where it says allowing it to function essentially unchanged, and before that they try to make sure that this is all ornamental. There's nothing. Okay. By the fact that they're going to put individuals from the state, from the citizenry onto the board, Disney is effectively losing their self-governance. If that is essentially unchanged, you don't understand the meaning of either of those two words, and you certainly shouldn't put them together. I mean, that you could not have a more monumental shift for Disney than to say, hey, you don't control this anymore. And that's what is happening. Now, if I were in leadership in Florida, I tell you one thing I would do. I would make sure that the name of the district changed. I don't care if we just had to change one letter in it so that they couldn't make that argument, oh, that Reedy Creek is still here. It's still the same, blah, 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 blah. I'd make sure that they change something about it. I don't know what I would change. But it's funny to me how Variety in one case wants to present it to you as if, oh, Disney's really taking its lumps, and if you continue reading on, it talks about, well, is Disney going to fight over this? Well, why would Disney fight over it if it was just essentially ornamental? Well, it can't be.
Yeah.
And so they know that.
It's ornamental except for the money part, right? It's all smoke and mirrors to them. It's all paper and names, right? Disney is very used to, if you know a history of Disney, one of the fascinating things about them, and I do like that interesting Disney history from a scheming corporate lawyer, scheming real estate lawyer perspective, where in the beginning they had all these different corporate entities go out and buy the land in Florida, going out there and naming themselves all sorts of different things, pretending they're ranchers, then all of a sudden putting it together and saying, oh, yep, now we're Disney. I mean, that was interesting. That was very creative. But, just because they got away with it, 60, 70 years ago, doesn't mean they're going to keep doing it today, particularly in this political environment, particularly when they're making themselves a political entity. And as we've seen, both in terms of the box office and in terms of the theme parks, this has increasingly been a bad idea for Disney.
I'll tell you one place that this actually could hurt them. So they've got a desire to push the theme park into being mostly run off of green energy. And they've already bulldozed somewhere between 1,200 and 2,000 acres of forest that's, habitation for animals and all kinds of, it's carbon capturing trees. They've already bulldozed between 1,200 and 2,000 acres of that to put up solar panels so that they can reach that goal. They've had to offsite that now. So they're putting that in other counties in Florida in order to be able to say that they have pushed the theme parks into being carbon neutral. If they want to continue bulldozing their forests and their wildlife and their habitats, I think that the people in the board who are not from Disney are going to say, no, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to do that anymore.
Yeah, if you guys haven't heard
that ESG score.
If you guys don't know what a gopher tortoise is, Google gopher tortoise. In Florida, we take our gopher tortoises very, very, very seriously. And you can toss a single tortoise, right? You can take a tortoise from your land and you can toss it on the land. But more than one, you got to pull all these special permits. You got to do all this work. But, Disney goes out there, no regulation, and it's a turtle massacre. I mean, this is looking like a Shanghai buffet here, where you got turtle soup left and right. I mean, they're just there massacring these native species left and right, and yet they're getting this high ESG score because they virtue signal, which, by the way, thank you, Pro. That shows out the ridiculousness of ESG, is you have companies that are hurting and getting high scores and companies that, actually, if you look at what they're doing, versus companies that are trying to do the right thing and they get dinged because they're not speaking or signaling in the right way.
One of the funniest things about that is that Disney could have, because they've got like 1,000-acre, 1,200-acre solar farm, right?
Right.
They could have put that over their parking lots. They've got plenty of parking space. It would have provided shade for all of the cars. They could have put charging stations on those. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who think Disney is pristine and perfect and the pixie dust is in your eyes right now and you're mad and you're furious at us, even though, guess what, that cognitive dissonance is sitting in because we got all this right. But guess what? It was cheaper to bulldoze down those trees. So Fern Gully, have at it, man. You're done for.
Pixie dust is a hell of a drug. I've said it once and say it again. Pixie dust is a hell of a drug.
That's Indeed. And I want to read this section from the article as this kind of wraps up. It goes to say more of what we've been talking about. As described by Watkins, the key difference would be the state-appointed board seats. And depending on who held the majority, the new board could be anything from a minor annoyance to a major headache, although park visitors and employees may not notice any difference. Either way, Disney, which has enjoyed sole control over the district for the last 55 years, will be sharing power with the state. Disney would take that happily, predicted one Tallahassee insider. Disney has its friends in the legislature and employs 38 lobbyists who can try and tilt the deal in its favor. Good luck at this point with that. And then here comes more of the bad legal takes. But if it can't reach a legislative solution, the alternative is to file a First Amendment lawsuit that could easily drag on for years with no guarantee of success. But as Andrew has stated before, it wouldn't drag on for maybe but 12 hours until the judge would throw it out with no legal standing.
Motion to dismiss, blown the fuck out. This is not federal court. The state, I mean, they're going to get blown out in state court. This is going to be an embarrassment to them. They're going to be walked out of here. They're going to just shame walk out because once again, a government entity does not have that sort of speech, right? And well, no, so governments do have free speech. Sorry, they don't have standing because they're not the government entity. It's the government entity that has the standing to bring the case. But the government entity, their freedom of speech isn't being silenced at all. I mean, Reedy Creek, once again, they can say whatever they want to say. It's not because Reedy Creek made a statement. It's because Disney, right? That's completely and entirely different.
Reedy Creek made no statement on the Don't Say Gay bill. They've made no statement on any LGBTQ, Ron DeSantis. They have made no such statements that anybody has reported. So therefore, how do you keep getting this wrong?
I hope I am in Florida. Oh, go ahead.
It gets even more fun because, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I'm a little bit outside of my wheelhouse here. But I believe that if Disney wanted to, if they wanted to try this Hail Mary attempt that Variety pretends is realistic, if they wanted to try, it would go to the district court for the Middle District of Florida, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so if it goes to the Middle District, by and large, they're not going to find someone there who is going to be eager to assist them in this endeavor. I'm looking at the roster of judges, and I just don't see where they're going to thread this needle.
I know many of them as well. They're not going to find one that's sympathetic to this argument, and particularly to this sham argument, because it's really going to, I mean, frankly, like if I was in Florida, I pray I'm visiting my family or I'm down there, I will walk into that courtroom hearing just with some popcorn, right? I'll sneak it in my coat jacket and I'll just be chewing it because it's going to be golden how they're going to get chewed out by the judge. Motion to dismiss, they get taken out. Boom, like that. There's no sympathy. And by the way, even bad politics, I still believe in our legal system. I still believe in our justice system. I still believe that you have to have these fundamental things and procedure. If the Supreme Court is united on one thing, it's procedure. Those 9-0 votes on the Supreme Court, they're procedure. And look at them. Most of them get blown out for standing. This is exactly how they get blown out. It wouldn't even be political. It would just be, this is how the law works, and trying to go with that would be a gross misunderstanding of the law. By the way, I didn't follow it, but I do believe there was some sort of a lawsuit from some citizens in South Florida, which was hilarious because they didn't even have standing. I didn't even follow that one because it wasn't even worthwhile because it was just a bunch of random uninformed weirdos. But I'm sure that one got blown out as well.
It was, and I thought we had talked about that, if I'm not mistaken, because what I seem to remember, if it's the lawsuit that we're thinking of, there was an attorney from Miami-Dade that filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida on behalf of, he found two people. He found one person in Orange and one person in Osceola to sign on to this attempted class action nonsense. The problem was, of course, taxes. Right. And the problem, of course, was the judge said there has been no damage done yet. There is nothing happened yet, because the whole issue, the bill that Florida passed to strip Reedy Creek of its powers, does not go into effect until July 1st of next year, 2023. And at that point, then they would have to figure out what's going to happen with the bond service. But again, as even gets questioned in this Variety article, where people were calming down bondholders and all this, it'll get paid. Again, we've already debunked this myth. Disney has been effectively, directly or indirectly, paying those bond bills. They have been paying those interest notes. You know, again, it's not coming directly from Disney, but via Reedy Creek through the money that Disney pays to Reedy Creek in taxes or whatever they're going to call it. Disney is paying those now. Disney would continue to ultimately be responsible for paying those down the road. Nothing changes.
And let me be very clear about the bonds too. These are not like bonds that are generally held by your mom and pops. These are owned by very big, sophisticated buyers who understand these very complicated financial products and the risk, because there's an additional risk if you're taking a bond on of a special taxing district. Mm-hmm. But these are bondholders that know what they're doing. They're bought by groups like Oppenheimer. That's not doxing or anything. These guys know what's going on. And I guarantee you, by the way, because I've been in on those calls, I've been in on those, conversations, they've had the real talk. They've been told the real, which is they've been told, hey, guys, don't worry about it. There's going to be success entity. You're going to be paid. Don't worry about it. We still got this. Whatever's going on is going to go on. I guarantee you the bond counsel has got on with them. The general counsel has gone on them and explained that. So I don't think the bondholders are sweating 1 minute over a lost penny.
No, I think the only ones, you're absolutely right. The only ones that absolutely are, or at least have, or maybe, panicked because they've been given a lot of misinformation are going to be the much smaller number of individual bondholders that might be out there. Like you might have somebody that lives in the area or lives in Celebration that their financial advisor went out and they said, hey, how about we pick up a few shares of this new Reedy Creek bond issue? It's paying 5% and it's, it's tax free because it's a muni, right? Okay, great. They might have some of that in their portfolio, but Andrew's right. The largest individual holders of these bonds are going to be the big institutionals, right? They're going to be the Oppenheimers, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Bank of America. We can go on down the list. I mean, you can look up, and I believe Andrew in a previous video, I think you and I, Matt, I even looked up one of the CUSIPs of the bonds and looked at it, and it's like, I mean, we know it's like any muni bond out there. Most of the holders of those bonds are big institutional investors, big banks.
And let's get real too. If you're sitting in Celebration holding Reedy Creek bonds, you're also no dummy. You didn't get in Celebration by being stupid.
Right. And you can go to Emma, which is, I think it's emma.msrb.org. Yep. You can look up the bonds yourself. You can look up any bond, by the way. You can look up any bond you want for any entity. And I would encourage you, if you are in a local government in Florida or anywhere else, look up what bonds that your city, county, local government has taken out, so you're aware of what you're paying for. I think when you look at your tax bill, you should be aware of what you're paying for. And frankly, you should speak out. If there's something on there or they're paying for something you don't agree with, go and speak out. That's your God-given right. Right. The problem is that the citizens of Orange County haven't been given that right. They've been denied the right to speak on this, denied the right to really comment on this at all, because Disney has sole control of it, which is what brings us to where we're at today.
Yeah, indeed. And I know I want to wind this down. I want to thank y'all both for being here. Just give you an opportunity here as we kind of close out. Any final thoughts that you want to offer to the audience before we head out? Pro, let you jump in here first.
There's been a lot of people who, from the get-go of this, were on the opposite side, and they're the legal eagles who suddenly knew exactly what was going on. They bought into all the stuff that they were reading from the propagandists, right? That's the corporate media that's giving you the spin in favor of Disney. Well, none of the stuff they said came true. And like a roadmap, everything that Andrew has said, everything that Valliant has said, everything that I've worked with them on, all this has come true. So you're sitting there with cognitive dissonance trying to figure out, well, how is it that these idiots managed to get this right? Well, let me just give you one example. So we brought up earlier the thing about there was a lawsuit brought against the state of Florida because they were proclaiming that they were going to have their taxes raised. They were private citizens. And all of these publications came out and they championed this as the little guy is finally fighting back. We've got a class action lawsuit. Finally, Florida's going to pay, and it was all put out there as if it was real. Guess what? It wasn't. It was one attorney seeking a little bit of fame for himself. And if you actually dove down and looked at the individuals, it was a husband and a wife, and the husband was trying to launch a failed podunk political campaign. Right? He's like that Z-tier politician who wants to run something out of some sort of strip mall.
Runs in every election.
That's right. That's what was going on. What was that guy who had the crazy mustache that time? I don't remember that guy. But anyway, but that's what they champion as being realistic. People have got to start figuring it out. At some point, you've got to start figuring out. If the last 2 or 3 years have not taught you that you can't trust the mainstream media, I hate to say that, but you can't. And until you figure that out, the world is not going to make much sense to you. And you're not going to understand what in the world is going on down in Florida. Mm-hmm. Why can't people talk about people of a certain persuasion? Why did the schools ban it K through 12? And why are they attacking Disney now? People are horrible. And then that's extremely low resolution thinking. And you're getting that extremely low resolution thinking from people who want you to think at that very base level. So glad you joined us for 55 minutes, 56 minutes to get the real talk. And I hope this has elevated and educated you, and you come away a lot smarter by having joined us. That's the goal.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree with that. We try to elevate from like lizard brain to at least like lower mammal brain. Like if we can hit like rabbit or cocker spaniel, like my duty is done. But seriously, guys, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to, like I said, professionals who know what they're talking about and give you the facts and kind of remove the emotion from it, remove the hyperbole, and just get right down to here are the issues to pay attention to, here are the issues to focus on. And at the end of this, when all the smoke clears and Reedy Creek keeps on keeping on as a other special district under 189 or 190, all I will say is, told you so, bitches. And I will take a bow.
We will come back when that happens. Because look, folks, here's the thing. There, like I mentioned before, there is a clock on this. It is July 1st, 2023. So, I mean, Disney, and this is why they're doing it now. Disney is in the state of Florida are trying to get this put together and done well before that deadline comes around. I would expect to see something here in the very near future. I might not at all be surprised, and this is a primer, Tuesday, November 8th. Yes, that is election day, but it is also the end of year 2022 fiscal earnings report of the Walt Disney Company. I would not at all be surprised if we will learn some new information during that call, if not in prepared minutes from CEO Bob Chapek, but certainly you will have the guys and girls from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Barclays Bank, the big institutional investors of the Walt Disney Company. They're going to be in the Q&A session asking for a follow-up on the Reedy Creek situation. I'm sure that's going to come up. And we will be covering it on a live stream, Pro and I together, that afternoon, Tuesday, November 8th at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And Andrew, you're more than welcome to join us as well. But that's like 5 a.m. where you're at. So
hey, I'm always glad to hang with you. And my prediction is based on the public hearings, this thing can't hang out later than Q1 of 2023 because there's a timeline for public hearings for proper establishments of special districts. So I think Q1 would be it, but it might be even Q4 here in 2022. So yeah, no, I'll be there and I'll be happy to come on your channel anytime. WDW Pro, excellent time talking with you today.
Thank you both for being here. Well. And thank you everybody for watching out there. Make sure you subscribe to Legal Mindset and go check out thatparkplace.com and WDW Pro. We will leave links to all of this and the previous videos where we discussed this the first time in the description below. And until next time, take care.